Hello, my name is Jamie and welcome to this week's tutorial. This week we're continuing on with the raptor. We're going to work on the head. And then I think next week we'll probably sort of just do some overall detailing, adding some extra details, and then see where we go from there. You might be thinking that this video is a bit late, and it is. My apologies. I've had lots of work. Just got a new job, so I've been focusing on that. But I've got a couple of days off, so I'm going to catch up and make sure I've got plenty of content to keep things going. And for now, we'll get into modelling. Just sorry, my keyboard's gone a bit wonky. That's better. Okay, so I'm running Blender 2.6a now. Everything should be working just fine. I haven't had any issues with it yet. The files have completely come over fine with the layers and stuff, and this still works, the background image, with the transparency and stuff, so that looks all good. So, yeah, we'll get into modelling and working on the head a bit. First thing I'm noticing here is the actual model's not lining up with the silhouette of the reference very much. That's from the subdivision, so what we can do is just sort of move the vertices out and just keep an eye on the form and see, sort of just eyeball it and see that it comes sort of about out to where you want it to come out to. I'll move that one back up, make it look like that. There's no extra vertices along there, so can't do much there, but we can make sure we grab the center one and bring that down a bit. And just grab sort of those ones, maybe even just this one, bring that out. And try to sort of preserve the shape that was already there, but just sort of exaggerating things for the subsurface modifier to sort of give it enough form. You'll probably find that as you increase the detail level of everything, you'll need to probably move things back again, because there'll be sort of, as you can see, say if I throw in a few loops here, it sort of starts to build things back up, and then if I was to throw in a few along here, it's even sort of closer to where the actual edges are. So yeah, as you get more polygons and more detailed, it should more closely resemble the cage mesh. I'm fairly happy with what's going on there, so I'm going to start looking at the head and exactly what we need to do with it. What we'll probably end up doing is, because we've got this good line along here for where the mouth is, let's start off by selecting all those vertices along that line and just hitting V with the mouse cursor pretty much anywhere above or below the line. Try not to get it too close to any of the vertices because it might not work. But yeah, that's fine. So I've separated everything there. I haven't selected this corner one because otherwise that would sort of separate everything further up into the head, and that's not really what we're looking for. So yeah, we've got that. I'll probably just, sorry, I've got proportional editing on, turn that off. Sort of keep it pretty close. You'll see everything's looking pretty sort of wide and it's almost like a big duckbill at the front at the moment, so obviously it needs a lot of work on the form and stuff. It's best to sort of get that sort of stuff down pat now rather than when there's lots of details. So I'll bring that in, and this is just with proportional editing on, just hit O, and you can adjust the sort of amount of influence. I'll just brought those in a bit, just sort of thin out the head, and I'll probably bring that top in a little bit as well. So I'm going to want sort of this area for where the eye is going to be to stick out a little bit more, so the eye has more space to sort of look out from. Yeah, that's looking a bit better. It's a bit more like the shape we're looking for. So what we want is probably an edge loop sort of coming around, at least just for sort of around the mouth, so we can add more detail in later. We want one that sort of comes around and goes back around like that. And it's not going to be as easy as just doing a quick couple of extrusions. We're going to probably have to rebuild a little bit. So I will add an edge loop in, drag it down to about there, and then one on the bottom as well. So we've got a sort of basis for where we want things to go. And then I just deleted those 6 vertices, because what we want to do is redirect the polygon flow to go around rather than sort of go across. So what we can do is just rebuild a couple of polygons here. Just enough. So we've got an idea of what's going on there. I might just turn off the background image whilst we're doing this so we can see everything that's going on a bit better. So turn off proportional editing and just sort of bring these around, and you could possibly merge those at center, and you will get the sort of edge flow that you want, but it's sort of looking like we're going to want to make a cut there. Yep, that looks good. So I'll just connect that there. So we've got sort of an extra polygon coming in. We've got a vertex there to keep it quads. If I fill that in, no, that's not going to work, is it? Because that would flow properly, but it's sort of too tight of a corner. So just sort of experiment like I am here. That flow is going to go that way, and that one's going to go that way, which isn't what we want. Just delete that vertex. Try extruding this out. Then merging those two, and we've got that sort of flow we were looking at before. That should be okay, but we could probably merge those two maybe. I don't even want to do that, but I want to. Oh yeah, I do want to merge them. Okay, those at centre. And then just select all these vertices and F to build those in. So now we've got sort of some edge flow to add some detail in to the sort of the lips, if you can call them that, or sort of the skin around the mouth. Probably going to want to start with the eye, so we'll bring in the reference again, and I can see this edge is going straight down the middle of that eye, which is probably a good thing. So what we'll do is we'll add an edge loop here, and you can see the sort of eye socket is here, so I've just moved that edge to the left side of the eye socket, and I'll move this edge here, just a loop cut with Control R, to the right side of the eye socket, so we can sort of start to shape a few things to sort of follow that sort of shape. and we'll probably add in another edge loop through the middle just to allow us to round that out a bit and give us a few more polygons to define the eyelid with. So what we can do is I'll start by extruding these four faces in, and then I'll scale and just sort of line up the vertices with the sort of shape of the eye on the reference, and then I can just grab this vertice, delete that, and we can sort of see that's where the eyeball and eyelid's going to be. So if we do a Control R and probably get it pretty close into the eye, just so that it's that sort of round shape, scale it up a bit, maybe scale in the Y a little bit to sort of give that eyelid shape. Just bring that back, bring the whole thing back in as well. So we've got that sort of raptor eye going on. We're looking for sort of a ridge along there, so we've got that. Yeah, so add in that edge loop, bring it out a bit, and probably with the sort of inside area of the eye socket, just bring that in towards the middle a bit. Bring that in a bit as well. Bring this in on the X a little bit, and just sort of start defining all the sort of contours and all the cool shapes that you see. So feel free to pick and choose. Sorry, pick and choose how sort of well defined you want some areas. You don't have to have it sort of all exactly matching the reference perfectly, but sort of just use it as a basis for the sort of where the shapes are and all that sort of stuff. Probably thinking this head's looking a bit flat. So I'll just bring this up a bit so it's a bit curvier. I'm probably going to want an edge loop going just all the way through the middle there. And we can, I suppose the first thing to do is deselect everything on the head and just get with B and then middle click and drag. So we got that, and then just do an Alt S and just sort of so that's where it starts, and just bring it out a little bit, just so there is some movement on all of that. Now the head's going to look a bit weird at the moment, but we can sort of use that loop we just created to just round things out a bit. So bring that up, maybe out a little bit. Bit of movement in the neck and stuff where we didn't select it. And then we've got this top of the nose area. You can sort of see there's this ridge going along the side of the head, this area along here. It's more of a personal preference as to how you want it to look. But I've found, sort of in experimenting with a previous model, that sort of by adding that ridge you sort of expect it to be a little bit concave in the top of the head, which doesn't look very good to me, but you can sort of experiment, try things out. If you do want to add that sort of ridge, one of the best ways to do it is probably select sort of X amount of faces along here, sort of how long you want the ridge to go. Extrude, and then move in the X a bit, move it down a bit, scale in the Y a little bit. You sort of start to get that ridge defined, and then of course you got a lot of stuff going on in here that you can work with. But for this model I'm not going to have sort of that well defined ridge, just sort of have it as the side of the head. We can start just rounding this off. So select those vertices, bring them back a bit. You can bring them up when they need to be. So bring them out a bit along there. We're probably going to want to make this sort of nose a bit thinner still. So just hit O, scale it up quite a bit I think, and just sort of allow it to sort of taper in. And I'll bring that back just a little bit. Maybe even stretch onto this and bring it back forwards. Turn off proportional editing, and now we've got some extra stuff along there that needs to be made use of. We've also got this area here, which on the it's sort of an internal part of the head, I suppose is the best way to describe it. It's sort of, so there's the ridged areas sort of around here, the nostrils here. It's sort of a slightly concave area, is the best way to put it. It's sort of like the eye socket, just all the way along the nose. And in a similar fashion, what I'll do is select that edge, Control E, edge slide it down just past the nostril, and select this one, Control E, and edge slide it all the way back up here, just so I can go into face mode, select just those two faces, extrude, scale a little bit, select them again, just sort of bring them in a little bit as well, just sort of start to define that shape, and then start with 3 edge loops. That'll probably be enough for now. Just sort of define the shape again. That's here. I go to vertex mode and sort of round off the corner areas. Just sort of allow them to sort of follow the reference. Now the nostril is sort of quite flat against the sort of ridge, so I'll select that polygon, extrude, right click, and then scale it and bring it sort of right up against there. So bring it in a little bit, and maybe rotate it just a little bit that way as well. We're going to get sort of a weird shaped polygon there that can't really be helped unless you go into a lot more detail. But now we've got sort of a nostril going on. Probably want to add in an edge loop in there and bring it sort of pretty close, just so it's not so sort of gradual. And you can play with the position of the nostril quite a bit. I found that it can sort of look okay right on top of the nose. It can look okay sort of down the front here. Sort of depends on the model that you're working on and how you think it should look. Just going to select these, move it forwards a bit. Just using Control plus and Control minus to grow and shrink the selection. Scale it down a little bit. That's starting to look okay. It's fairly pointy in the end of the snout, so I'll just bring that out a little bit, just so it's a little less beak-like. And then we've got all this. We probably want to move these down a bit, just to allow that to be sort of more smoothed out. And this bottom area can go down a bit. Sort of try to keep these vertices along the centre of the general area. And then you can probably sort of bring them out in the X if you want to make it sort of rounded along there, if that's how you like it, or you can make it more concave, or just sort of flat. I'll probably have it about flat, like that for now. Then what I might want to do is, if I want to make it more ridge-like around the edge, just create an edge loop sort of just more towards the inside, scale it in a bit, bring it out in the X a bit. So now that's really, really well defined, which doesn't look very good, so I'll undo that. There's sort of this sort of ridged area between the eye and the nose that you want to make sure you sort of capture. But I've got sort of the starts of it, so I'll bring those verts in a bit closer, and maybe bring them in on the X more towards the centre. And just these four verts, or this polygon, you can move out a bit. And if you want to have a bit more sort of control over the shape of the curve, add an edge loop, bring it out a bit more, play around with it. I'll start to make sure that that's followed a bit closely. So right now that it's looking a bit high, so bring that down a bit. It does look like there's supposed to be more of a ridge along the eye, so you could add in a bunch of edge loops, sort of one along there, and start to define things. But I think the quick and nasty way to do it would be to extrude those faces, scale them down a bit, and then if we want to add some more detail to it, we can add in an edge loop there without disrupting the entire head. We should be able to just sort of, with this vertice, bring that out a bit, and define that a bit more, and use these to just sort of gradually allow it to be more part of the head. That lumpy bit there isn't doing anything for me, so I might reduce that down. Just sort of allow the snout to sort of gradually become part of the head rather than with all the lumpy parts. I like the sort of smooth sleek sort of look. If you want, you can have all the extra lumpy bits that sort of add some character. Just sort of bring that, make it a bit smoother. I think that's sort of most of the detailing on the head. It's starting to look there. If you want to sort of work on the internal of the mouth and stuff, what you can do is just with left click, place your 3D cursor sort of at the corner of the mouth. This probably goes back a bit further because that's where the vertex is. And we can just alt right click to select that edge loop along there, and just hit Control plus a few times to sort of select that whole mouth area. That we can use C or B to sort of select all of that stuff. Then hit period on your keyboard, or full stop or whatever you call it, and then R, and it will rotate anything you selected around the cursor, 3D cursor. So what I'll probably do is sort of rotate that a bit, maybe add this to the selection, add that to the selection, just sort of rotate that quite a bit open. And there is this part of the reference as well you can use to get an idea of how far back to put the teeth, where the tongue is, the sort of shape of the tongue, the gums and stuff. Building the teeth should be fairly easy. Just sort of make a little cube and extrude it out. And I'll even make a couple of teeth here. So add in a cube, scale it down. Just turn off clipping for a second. So we've got that. You can turn it back on. So I'll just take comma to set the transforms to be around the object center. And sort of look at the reference and go, okay, sort of from where the mouth corner is all the way to the tip, the bottom row of teeth appear to only go about halfway back, whereas the top row go pretty much 3/4, maybe 2/3. So that's something to look at. So about halfway back is about here, so that's where I'll start with the first tooth. So get an idea of the sort of size of the teeth. Maybe want them to be a bit bigger. And then I'll extrude that up and scale that pretty much down to a point. You can add some curve to the teeth, sort of like that. They don't have to be very sort of high detail objects. And if you want to do sort of scuff marks and stuff along the teeth, that's best done with textures. Sort of bump maps and stuff. So I'll just make that a bit thinner, like that. Maybe add in just a couple of edge loops to allow you to define the shape a bit more. So we've got that sort of toothy looking thing. And then just a matter of duplicating it a bunch of times with Shift D, move it into place. You can just use L to select all linked vertices. It's sort of a little bit tedious in selecting everything and getting everything into position. So now we've got a bunch of teeth. Probably going to want more than this, because that's looking pretty sparse. And these need to come in a bit more and stuff. So just bring those in. So you sort of want them to be just with inside the lip, like that. Yeah, you can even count on the reference. You've sort of got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, maybe 14, sort of just on the side. At the moment I've got about 6, I think. So yeah, add in lots of teeth. Don't have to keep them at the same height. Don't even have to keep them at the same sort of size. Probably make them sort of smaller, maybe a little bit sort of taller, though, as they get to the front. So sort of scale it, just scale it down generally, and then scale it up in the Z a bit, just so you got this pointier tooth. That can sort of really cut into flesh and stuff. You probably don't want them all rotated the same way, so choose how you want them rotated. Sort of like this. Just rotate them that way. And then what we'll do is we'll extrude this sort of bit, and that's going to be the lip. Just let that come in a bit. Probably want to move that sort of about there, then extrude that, and we'll do that in the side view and just sort of bring that down. So we've got this sort of lip shape going on, and then we can sort of start to add in a gum, and for the gum, pretty much just, I think the best way to do it is I'll just grab a polygon and shift D to duplicate it, move it down into the sort of mouth area, and when I picked one that was pretty much the right orientation, which is good. But we will want to so get the two vertices at the end sort of like that. Selected the wrong one there. So this vertex here, want it to be right up to sort of where the lip is. And this one, you're gonna want the sort of tongue model to sort of overlap with this, or you could possibly extrude the tongue out of this, if that's how you want to do it. I'll just add in a couple of edge loops, bring these out, just so that it covers the bottom of the mouth. And you can then use this sort of shape to start sort of the gum where all the teeth are in. Make sure when you're cutting you get in the right spot. Just sort of bring that down and sort of start to create this sort of ridge where all the teeth can belong to. And you probably want to, if you can find that edge. And it's even possible you could just sort of bring it out, and then once you've got it sort of looking how you want it to. So we've got the teeth starting to poke out. If you want the extra detail, do go ahead, create the extra edge loop along here to sort of line up with where the tooth is, which didn't happen there. So we've got this sort of vertices either side of the tooth, and then we can what I'll do to get rid of this extra bit, I'll just create an edge loop that sort of goes within the lip, just to sort of hide where the sort of gum ends, and I'll bring that in a bit. And then I'll just select those vertices and delete them, so we can't see them anymore. And there's only just a little bit of the gum poking out here. Sort of bring all this in to match the teeth. This is all very rough, so please do spend more time on this than I am. But then you can extrude that sort of up to sort of start to show that the tooth is actually sort of coming out of the gum rather than it just sort of being there. But that's the sort of level of detail you're going to want if you're doing a sort of a real super close up of the teeth and sort of bits of flesh and stuff that's in the teeth, if that's what you're doing. Yeah, you can create sort of extra edge loops in there and sort of look at how you want the teeth to come out of the gums. For most purposes that would look fine as it is. Just sort of do that for all the teeth. And the reason why I do this separately rather than having it as a part of the gum, as a part of the tongue, is because you're going to have sort of a fairly odd sort of loop flow going on in this, because it's just pretty much a plane that's been distorted. It's going to have lots of sort of edges sticking this way and stuff. And you, sort of as you get to the front, probably lots of edges poking that way. And I'd make the tongue just a separate mesh to sort of allow the tongue to have its own edge flow rather than forcing it to come off of this. So yeah, just keep that in mind when you're modelling. And I think the last thing you'd probably be looking at is the piece of sort of flesh where the lips are. If you look in this reference, you see this bit of flesh in here. It's sort of, I'm not too sure if it's muscle or what it is, but it's there, and it's sort of quite distinctive looking type of thing. So I'll just quickly create a rough lip. So we've got a couple of lips there. Imagine there's a top row of teeth, and there's lots of teeth, and it's all really scary looking. I'll get rid of the reference for now, because we don't really need it. And I might just select everything quickly and set the shading to smooth, just because I'm a bit pedantic like that. But you can do it two ways. You can create it as part of the current mesh, you can create it as a separate part. It's a separate polygon. It's sort of up to you, really. I think the best result I got was actually making it as a part of what's going on already. So just sort of take another look at the reference. You can't look at it too much, really. So it appears to be sort of there's the lip that's there, and then the flesh is sort of behind the lip, and it sort of goes in behind that. So yeah, just sort of got to think about that. So we've got the, if we get rid of the reference again, just so that it's not getting in our way. We've got the lip there. Probably want to extrude that again and bring that in or up, just to sort of help with the lip shape. And I haven't got these connected just because that corner can get a bit weird. And it should look fine without the two lips being connected. I mean, getting pretty close in there, and it still looks okay. I mean, when you've got a texture on there, you're not going to be worried about that. So probably the best way to do it is to select these. Select these two edges and hit F. And select these two edges and hit F. And then we'll just, that should be just one edge there. Yeah. So we've got this sort of fleshy bit coming in there. We might even add sort of another polygon's worth. So this edge and this edge, and just F. So that creates the fleshy bit sort of behind the lip, and you're sort of completely free to add in some detail along the lips there. You know, sort of Alt S a bit, make it come out a bit. So you got that, and that doesn't really interrupt with anything. If you probably want to add a bit of thickness to it, so I'll just select that edge, bring it in a bit, and I will do Control N and shade smooth on that. And it is going to look a bit weird sort of down the bottom where it's connected to stuff, but you can bring in an edge loop and just sort of bring that, I mean you can bring that all the way down if you want to, just hide that. Sort of forces the weird stuff to sort of get out of the way. Because as you may have figured out with 3D sort of modelling and animation, a lot of it is hiding the bad stuff and figuring out how to just show off the good stuff. So I've just hidden all the bad stuff, and then I can say add in 3 edge loops here and make it look sort of a bit more like it's organic. Just sort of move these around a bit. So I've got this fleshy bit between the teeth. It's probably quite thick, so just bring that in a bit. That looks okay. Then if you're really dedicated, you can go to side view, extrude this back, and sort of scale it down. So you got this piece of flesh in the mouth that doesn't really interrupt anything, although it is connected to sort of these areas of the lips, so if you're adding in more detail to the head, you are going to catch that in there as well. So just be wary of that. And I think as far as the head goes, that will do for the tutorial. Please do spend some more time on it than I have. I'm sort of looking at that bottom jaw and thinking it's a bit too wide at the moment, so I might just select that vertex, hit O, and just proportionally move quite a bit of that in, just so it's so wide at the bottom. Get lots of references and sort of choose how you get the details and how you want the details to look, because there are a lot of different designs sort of for the Velociraptor head. The body generally is about the same through most of the references, but the head can vary quite a lot. I mean, in the reference we've got, there's sort of some minor feathers coming out the top. Some you'll see have huge, big things coming out the top of the head. Some have none whatsoever. Some have ridges like that. Some don't. Sort of like the model that I've gone for, so they're more smooth and sleek. So yeah, please do experiment and have fun with it. I think next week, yeah, we'll do more detailing, sort of defining the muscles in the legs and stuff in the actual mesh itself. So the more detail you can get into the mesh without it looking stupid is good, because then that can be emphasized by your textures and normal maps and stuff. And then I think before texturing and unwrapping and stuff, I'll probably do a time lapse of myself just modelling an entire new raptor from scratch, and then I'll distribute that model so everyone's on the same page, and it'll be a fairly higher quality model than the one that we've got here, which it still looks pretty good. But yeah, I'd like to start with a higher quality sort of thing when we go to texturing. So there's that to look forward to. Please do leave any comments and stuff, ratings, subscriptions, all that sort of stuff that goes with YouTube. Appreciate any support. Tell your friends, tell your family, put up flyers, I don't know. Just sort of enjoy yourself and have fun with it, because it's a cool, fun thing to be modelling. So yeah, good luck and have fun.